All right, how's it going, everybody? Welcome back to my channel. We are going to be building an absolutely insane build today. We are going to be building a Slack AI chatbot, and this is going to be pulling in from AWS, Amazon Bedrock. So we're going to be pulling from literally we could pull from like 30 plus different AI models. We can also automate this whole entire process super easily with n8n, and we're also going to be showing how to build in a knowledge base so that your AI model can actually pull from real-time data that you save in your data store or in your cloud buckets or wherever you store your data. So this chatbot is so cool. And when I say so cool, it's so cool because literally instead of needing to go to like ChatGPT or needing to like go to like Claude or any of these other types of apps or make your own, you could literally just use all of Slack's infrastructure to then be able to then make your own chatbot. And we're pulling from the latest and greatest AI models. So we're going to be able to use, we're going to use Claude for V3 for those models, and it packs so much heat when we are asking it questions. But what we're going to do is we're going to go through the whole entire process. This is going to be a complete masterclass on how to build your own chatbot. You'll see too, and I'll put this up on the screen. If you needed, so basically Slack is free to use, but it gets really expensive when you have users. And one of their new features is creating this AI Slack bot, but that's going to cost you about like $10,000 a year if you have 1,000 users, and let's say 100 of them are active. That's going to be, a lot of money because you're going to be basically paying, let's say like, and the pricing around is about like $9. So if you do like $9 for 900 users, or basically $9 for 100 users, that's $1,000 a month. 1,000 times 12 is, it gets up there, right? So we're looking at like saving literally over 10K building this specific chatbot. I am so excited to build this. This took so long to construct and to build, but I think this is one of the most comprehensive courses on how to build Slack chatbots, especially with Amazon Bedrock and AWS and AI. So I'm just so excited to finally have this ready for you all to check this out. I think you're going to be learning so many cool things in this whole course. So without further ado, let's roll the video and see what we're going to build. So what we're going to do is that I do want to also just throw up onto the screen a lot of the inspiration for this specific build, and then we're going to walk through how to actually build it together. So I'm going to get that up on the screen in one moment. So let's get this. All right, cool. So one of the really great aspects of n8n that I really appreciate is the ability to explore what other people create. So Angelo Menendez created this IT Ops AI Slack bot with knowledge base. So basically, like, we're going to be building this same thing, but instead of using OpenAI, we're going to be using Amazon Bedrock for the AI model. But what we're going to learn about is webhooks. We're going to learn about how to work with n8n for bot responses. We're receiving responses, and then basically parsing out information and then receiving data. So that was the inspiration for my bot. And what we're going to do is we're going to go look at this. So this is what we're going to be building together. So we're going to basically take an input. This input is going to be an event from Slack. So anytime that a user mentions our bot, we're going to be receiving that information. That's then going to go to our execution data, which is going to just do some pre-processing and basically just collection of that data. We're then going to do some more processing of that information to consolidate it into a prompt. We're then going to basically use this LLM chain node from n8n. We're going to pull in our model of choice, which you'll see here we're using Claude. We're then going to take all this information, formulate this into a message, and then pass this back to Slack. And this is going to be completely from beginner, this is completely beginner friendly. We're going to go from like literally ground zero all the way up to Slackbot implementation. So if you're excited to build this, I want to see you write in the chat that you are ready to build. And I also want you to post what you end up building and tag me on social, what you end up building with all these tools. So n8n, Slack, AWS, Bedrock. I'm so excited to show you all this build. So without further ado, let's actually get started and create this whole entire project. So when we get to n8n.io, this is where we're going to be able to log in and start setting up our automations. So with n8n, you can create these secure AI native automations that basically work like pipelines, and you can connect all these different services together really easily and have them all talk to one another. So when I'm already signed in, so this is what my workspace will look like. And what you'll do is that when you want to create a project, you can create a project here. And then this is where we'll call this Slack Bedrock pipeline. So that's going to be able to connect our Slack with Bedrock, and we can call this any name that we want. And this is my account. So we'll give this a save. All right. So now once we've saved our project, we'll be able to start saving credentials. So this is going to be important when we are setting up our Slack or our AWS credentials. And we'll do the AWS one first, and then we'll add in Slack as well. So I am logged into the AWS console, and this is what the homepage will look like. Yours might look a little different from mine, but something that we can do immediately is go to IAM, and that's Identity and Access Management. And this is going to allow us to create a role that could assume the correct permissions that our Slack bot will need to be able to interface with Slack, with the workspace, with n8n, and be able to communicate securely these permissions. Now, what we're going to do is that we're going to, on the left, go to users, and we're going to create a user, and we're going to create a key. So this is for a test project, right? So if you really wanted to configure this correctly in the most secure way, there is something called IAM roles anywhere, which we'll learn about in a little bit, just very briefly. But this would be a more secure way to implement this type of integration. But you can also use an IAM user. It will just create a long-lived credential. So you do need to think about how you rotate keys, ensuring permissions and privacy and security and all of that. So what we're going to say is we're going to say n8n Slack permissions. Call it Slackbot. So n8n Slackbot permissions, and we don't need it to have access to the management console. That's because it's not going to be a logged in user. We just need to be able to have a key to provision this specific user. So then we will attach policies directly, and we're going to say that this has Bedrock full access. And you could make these as granular as you want, but because we just want to use access to Bedrock, I'm just going to give it full access to Bedrock. Although what we'll probably do to test is just to get this working, and then we'll scope down the policies and the permissions so that down the road, we're able to have it assume fewer and fewer policies as well. Something also that we might want to do as well is create a policy. And you also could set a permission boundary as well, but we'll just get this set up for now, and then we can always edit the policy later. So we'll do next, and then we'll say create user, and now this user will be able to assume all of this stuff. So if you see n8n, we'll see that this Slackbot permissions is here, and then now we'll be able to add more permissions. We could also edit what we have here. We could also do all the security permissions that we want. So what we're going to do is that we're going to create an access key, and we are going to select this one. So application running outside of AWS. So there is something called IAM roles anywhere to generate temporary security credentials for non-AWS workloads that access AWS services. So this is something where we're going to be throwing this into n8n outside of AWS, but we want it to be able to use AWS services, right? So you could theoretically use this, and that would be for a more secure workloads. That's where you're setting up a CA, so that's certificate authority, and then basically like you use that to create an object as a trust anchor, and then the anchor establishes trust between the roles anywhere and your certificate authority for authentication. And then you could, configure, existing IAM roles or create new ones, and then authenticate your non-AWS workloads with the IAM roles anywhere. So this is a great, basically a way to configure access, but we're just going to create an access key for us for now. So what we're going to do is we're going to say, this is for our n8n Slack bot. Cool. And then we'll create an access key. And then once we create the key, we get an access key and a secret access key. So what we're going to do in n8n is we're going to copy these permissions. So I'm going to copy these into a separate notes file, and then I'm going to then throw these into n8n to make it easier. So I definitely recommend like having a notepad or something like that, just so that you can keep track of these keys at some point. Just make sure that you don't keep these, on your computer or something like that where anybody could access them, because we want to keep this secure. Also, if you do, this is the only time that you'll be able to basically access these credentials. So you could also download a CSV file and save that in a secure, maybe a password protected place in the cloud, or, locked away on your computer or something like that. Or, save these to a .env file somewhere that's, secure and won't get pushed to GitHub or something like that. But yeah, this is just one of the only places where you'll be able to access these keys. So just make sure that you are very careful about that. Now, back in n8n, we're going to add our first credential. So what we're going to do is we're going to say AWS, and we'll say continue. And then this is for, I'm in US East 1, and you'll be able to check that in the top right corner of your AWS console, but we're just going to keep it as US East 1 here. And now we're going to throw in our access key, and then we're going to put in our secret access key that we just copied down. And that looks pretty good. So now for custom endpoints, we don't need to worry about any of this. So we'll click save. And now it's going to authenticate, and we see that it basically was successfully checked and the connection tested successfully. So that's great. We could also retry this again. And yep, it didn't get any errors. So that's great. So now we have our AWS credential saved for our Slack Bedrock pipeline. And that all looks good. So now that we have our AWS credential set up, we'll then move on to add our next credentials as well. Now, if you don't already know what Slack is a workspace that enables you to chat with maybe your employees, maybe your team members, maybe use it as a community, and you can communicate messages out to large groups of people. So I'm on the Slack page here, and they have a ton of features that come with Slack. So you can create channels, and that can help you organize your communications and your conversations. You can also chat or connect to other partners that you might work with, or other people completely outside of your community or your company. And you can also direct message your team. You can also jump onto huddles, which combines audio and video, so do sort of like an instant Zoom or Google Meet or Teams message. You could just create a meeting like that. You could also record and share updates with clips. You could do search over all of your messages. There's just tons of different features. One of the new things that they just announced was Slack AI, so you can work smarter and faster, with a simple AI system. So Slack has a ton of really great features, and it looks just like this. And you could create your channels. You can chat with, different people. You can also react to messages. You can also integrate it with apps like Google Calendar, the huddle that I just talked about. There's a lot of these different features here. Now, it has a lot that it offers, and we can get started completely for free with a free plan. Now, I do want to talk about the other plans, because one of the features that you might want to build, for example, is AI integrations into your product or into your community or into your company. Now, if we wanted to get started with Slack, we can completely do that for free here, as you'll see right there. But if we want to then make these other features like integrations, for example, or integrating Slack AI, now what we're going to start doing is that we're going to start getting built. And what gets a little bit wild is when we are trying to, integrate a service like this, we're going to get billed not $4 per month. It's actually, or $8 per month. There's a promotion, but we're mainly going to focus on the actual price of it. So about $9 per month. It's $9 per active user per month. So let's say that we have our own company. I'm going to get a calculator up so that we can look at this together. So let's say that we want to, build in an AI system into our Slack chat, right? So that's going to be $9 per user, active user per month. So let's say if we had, 1,000 users in our Slack workspace, but let's say that only, 100 of them are active, for example. So that's, 10%. So we have 100, active users times 9. That's $900 per month, and then per year, that's over 10K. That's $10,000, which is just so much money. So one of the benefits, I think, to being a developer is that if you could build your own systems, then you're saving yourself so much money. I mean, think about that. If you're able to just build an AI system into Slack, you're able to save, about $11,000, which per year, which to me, that's wild. That is insane. That is so much money that you could save being a developer. So that's why we're going to be looking at Slack and how to integrate a lot of really cool tools and backend systems into our Slack workspace so that we don't have to spend money on Slack, and we can do this completely for free. So let's get started. So I'm back on the Slack homepage, and what we're going to do is we're going to get started. And what we will do is we'll put in our email. So you put in your email here. We're going to then get a code. So I'm going to open up my email. And I got a confirmation. So I'm going to drop that in here. And then now I'm able to create my first workspace in Slack. So we'll click on create a workspace right here. And we'll name it. So we'll call it Tech Stack Playbook. And let anyone with a text playbook join your workspace. We'll say yes for this for now. And that sometimes is helpful for allowing, your other team members or other people in your community to join it instantly. So I'm going to say Brian for my name, click next, and then we'll skip this step for now. And then skip step. And we'll just say building a really cool AI chatbot. And then we're going to start with the free tier. And we'll close out of this. And now we have our free chat workspace in Slack. So this is going to be our free Slack workspace, and we're going to be able to build all these really cool integrations into Slack, all completely for free. So let's check this out. Now, to allow our outside systems to integrate into Slack, we're going to need something called an API token. So this is going to enable our Slack workspace to talk to other types of systems that we might integrate. So that's going to be specific for our bot integration. We're specifically going to go to here. So we're going to click here. And then what we're going to do is that we're going to go down to Tools and Settings. And then we're going to go to Manage Apps. So I just think this is a little bit easier to get to this quickly. So what we're going to do is that once this is going to bring you to the app of Slack. And what we'll do is that in the top right corner, this is our currently logged in user. So you're going to need to make sure that this is correct for the workspace that is going to assume this app. So we can click on build, and then we'll be able to either create an app or generate a token. And the configuration tokens are, you actually learn about them on this page, but there's different types of tokens, like a bot token. So this gives you granular permission to request, specific scopes to go into a specific channel. Workflow tokens, user tokens. We're specifically going to do a bot token. And to work with our specific API that we need for Slack, we're going to create an app. And this is going to abstract a lot of that complexity around token use so that we'll be able to actually integrate this into our Slack workspace super easily. So we'll create an app. And something that I like to do is just do from scratch. And this will allow us to just go through the settings and the scopes and all the features. So we're going to call this Bedrock bot. And this is going to be our Amazon Bedrock bot that's going to be able to use Amazon Bedrock in the background to basically use one of the LLMs we'll pick to then be able to talk to it from Slack. And we're going to put this into the tech stack playbook workspace here. This will then create a web API application, but what we really need for n8n is the web API. So that's the Slack API that we'll be able to then use to then integrate Slack and this bot together in the workspace. So we'll create our app. And then now we're going to get a whole bunch of credentials. So agents and assistants can work alongside people in Slack. We're basically going to be creating our own agent. So we got that. And then we're configuring our app in code. So there's an app manifest, and you could actually deploy all of this via YAML or JSON, but we're going to be just doing this in the console because it's a little bit easier, and it also helps to walk through all of the steps. If in case you haven't done this before, we want to make this really easy and simple for you can do it too. But if you wanted to automate this type of process, YAML and JSON are great options to deploy your infrastructure as code, a la Slack. So what we'll do right off the bat is we're going to save our client ID, our client secret, and our signing secret from Slack, specifically from the API, into our local notes so that we can copy those over. So I'll do that right now. So I'm going to copy that. Copy that. And then I'm going to copy this. And then back in n8n, we'll add another credential to our project, just like we did for AWS. And this is where we'll say Slack, and we'll do Slack API. We'll say continue. And that's where you're going to be able to get your access token. But something else that I actually like to do would be Slack OAuth 2 API. And that's where, and I think this is such a cool feature, is that you can connect your account directly. So we'll say connect my account. This is then going to pull up basically this integration to connect them together. So once we see this here, we'll scroll down and we'll say allow. You could also like manage all these, integrations and all this with the specific n8n documentation API and Slack API, but we want to move fast, right? So we'll be able to just allow this. Takes a second, and then boom, now our account is connected. This can be closed, and boom, now our account with Slack is now integrated with n8n, and that took like 2 seconds, which is like amazing, right? So now we're moving fast. We now have Slack integrated, and we have AWS integrated, all within our n8n pipeline or the credentials for our specific pipeline that we're going to be building out. All right, so now we can save our changes. This is now going to save our application. And now we'll be able to invite this into our workspace. So we'll go back here. And we can already see that n8n is integrated as an app, and we're going to add another app. So what we're going to do is that we're going to see if we can find our Slack bot that we just created. And if you do try to find the app, you won't actually find it yet. And the reason why is because we need to install at least a permission scope or one feature into our application. So what we're going to do, we can go to permission scope for our Bedrock bot. So if you scroll down a little bit, you'll be able to see a list of scopes, and we can start adding a bunch of these. So what we'll do is that we can add token scopes or user token scopes. Because we're building a bot, we're going to focus only on these ones. So we're going to add app mentions. So this will allow our bot to view messages and directly mention Bedrock bot in conversations in the app, so anybody could mention them and then they'd be able to go into certain actions. We'll also add channels, history, and this will allow viewing messages and other content public channels that Bedrock bot has access to. We'll also add channels read, and that's view basic information about public channels in a workspace. We'll also do chat write, and that allows us to send messages as the bot. We'll also do groups read, and that's view basic information about private channels that Bedrock bot has been added to. We'll also add assistant write, and that will allow Bedrock bot to act as an app agent, which you might want to add in other functionality as you go along. So this is a great scope for that one. We'll also do commands, and this allows shortcuts and slash commands that people can use, and also files read. So this will allow the viewing of files shared in a channel or conversation that Bedrock bot has been added to. And there's some other features for like files write if you wanted to upload, edit, or delete files as Bedrock bot, but we're not going to focus on that. That's just if somebody uploaded a file, they could work with it. So those are pretty much all of the scopes that we're going to start off with, and those should all be saved here. So now, because of the OAuth tokens, now we can generate this automatically and finish installing the app into the workspace. So we'll now click install to Tech Stack Playbook, and then we'll be able to allow. So now we have our bot user OAuth token. We now can go back to our app, and we got a notification because we got a Slack message, and it says you have installed Bedrock bot, which has an AI assistant or agent on Tech Stack Playbook. So you can manage the assistant experience for this workspace in the workspace settings page. All right, and now we actually have it here. So sending messages to this app has been turned off, so we're going to need to turn that on. And the way that we're going to turn that on is by going back to our OAuth and permissions. We're going to copy this OAuth tokens. So this is the bot user OAuth token for our Bedrock bot. We're going to then go to n8n back here in the credentials, and we're going to set up Slack API, and now we have an access token. So we're going to be able to save that. That credential was successfully tested. And now we're going to add some more information into our Slack OAuth 2. So we technically did reconnect, but we're going to reconnect again. We're going to click allow. And now the account was reconnected. So now we have our Slack API and our OAuth 2 API all set up. So now to make sure that our bot can be messaged as well as added in a channel, we're going to go back to our Slack API for our specific Bedrock bot, and we're going to go to app home on the left, and then we're going to scroll down, and then we're going to make sure that for the chat tab, direct messages your app sends will show in this tab and allow users to send slash commands and messages from the chat tab. So we're going to select that, and with the block kit, we can also add this to let people easily interact with this app across the workspace. So, and also I think it's also nice to show that it's online. I think it's just like a nice touch for our bot to show that it's always available. So now what we'll do is we'll go back to Slack. We'll give this a refresh. And now we can message our bot. So some very small tweaks just to make sure that the bot experience will be a good one. Also, I really want to change the icon here, just because it looks so bland. I want to like make it a little bit nicer. So what we'll do is we'll go to Canva, and I'll include a link in the description below of how to do that. But I have a screenshot of Amazon Bedrock, the service. So I'm just going to say that as Amazon Bedrock service icon. So we will download this, and it says that it needs to be within the size of 512 pixels by 2000. So this should be all good there. We'll give that a save. Now we'll try to add this app icon. All right, okay, I just feel like that looks so much cooler. And let me see if I can just pull out the color of this. So I want to just get the color of the gradient, but like the end of the gradient. Copy that. And then I want to see if I can just drop this a little bit. Yeah, nice. And if anybody's wondering, this is an app on Mac called Color Slurp, and you can like get this eyedropper and get colors from your screen. Okay, I think that looks so much cooler. And let's give this a little bit of a description. Bedrock connected to n8n so that users can speak to the LLMs that live within AWS. Use this bot to learn, build, grow, and achieve way more, thanks to the power of AI and the cloud and automation. Okay, sweet. So we'll save changes. And then now we'll be able to reload our Slack bot and see this with all of our themes and colors. All right, so now that we've saved, if we reload Slack, oh, this looks so much cooler. Okay. Yeah, that looks so much better. Much more personalized and customized. And it shows that it's always on. Okay, very cool. I'm wondering if I reload this, I wonder if it's making a new chat each time. Although that might not be the case. Might have been that I initiated it. Or maybe that was left over from before. Anyways, so if I was to message this, I'm going to say, hey there, are you there? It has no way to respond to me. And the reason why is because we have not set up a webhook. And a webhook is what we're going to configure for Bedrock Bot so that it can receive messages that I send it. So this is an event. And if you think about really anything that you do in an application, logging in could be an event, signing out could be an event, sending a message could be an event, or reacting to a message could be an event. You could have all these different types of events. And what we want to be able to do is that when you send a message from your Slack account in this workspace, we want to be able to send that message over to n8n, have it do its thing, and then send that back to Bedrock Bot, back into Slack, and that's how we're able to do the communication. So we're going to do that right now. So now that we are set up with our credentials in n8n, we're going to then go to our workflow, and we're going to start from scratch, and we're going to add a step. So when we add a step, we're going to search for Slack, and this is going to be on any event. We could also do this on bot app mention, on a file, made, or on a new message posted to the channel, on a new user. So you can do a whole bunch of different things, but let's just do like on any event. Now, what we're going to do is that we're going to get some webhooks, and we're going to be able to test these different ones. But to set up a webhook, we need to enable this node. So to do this, we're going to need to follow some of these steps, which are listed out here. So specifically what we want to change here is bot/app mention. And then we'll watch the whole workspace and Slack account 3, which is what we have already set up up here. And then now what we're going to want to do is we're going to test this URL. So we're going to copy this. We're going to run test step. Now what we're going to do, so we're going to go back to this. We're going to see event subscriptions, and we're going to paste this in. So this is going to make a request to our n8n environment. So it's listening for test events. That was successful, which is verified. Great. So now what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to add this production URL, and this should work. So if I'm running this, the production URL is live. If I go here and I try to change the URL, so it says that it won't work. Which I'm not exactly sure why. Because there isn't anything that's actually changing. We're just getting rid of test. So the only thing that I could think of that might be the problem is that if I were to turn this on, and then it's waiting for you to create an event in Slack. So if we go back here and I try and I retry, if we try to save this, there we go. So if you do run into that issue, just make sure that you go back to the workspace and you also save it, because sometimes that might not work. So you just need to keep that there. So that should be good now. So now we can scroll down and we can specifically look at subscribing to bot events. So these are all of the events that Slack enables bots to listen to. So we're specifically going to look at app mention. And that means that when a user at our Bedrock bot, then that's going to subscribe that message to n8n, and then we'll be able to receive that through our webhook. So really crafty way to link n8n with Slack. But you also have all these other different types of events. Like you could listen to if somebody left a channel, if a certain group was archived or something like that, or if a certain message was read. So there's a lot of these different types of events that a Slack webhook could enable our backend service to read from or work from. But we're just going to use app mention. So we'll give this a save and we got a success. So that's great. So now we'll be able to now test back in n8n if we send any sort of messages from our Slack workspace to then ping our Slack webhook integration, and then we should see those logged in n8n. We're going to go back to our Slack workspace. We're going to go to our channel, and then we're going to add our bot. So we could do @Bedrock bot. We'll click this, and we'll say, hey there. Now, our Bedrock bot isn't there yet, so we're going to invite them. So now Bedrock bot was added. Now, if we say, hey there, Bedrock bot. So we just sent a message to Bedrock bot. But the issue here is that this setting, watch whole workspace, is turned on. So this says that this will use one execution for every event in any channel your bot is on. So we should use with caution. So we'll turn this off, and then we'll select the channel. So we just added this to building a really cool AI chatbot. But you could also do this by ID or by URL. So this is the channel that we want to watch. So these are the different ones that we have here, but we're just going to switch to this one. So building a really cool AI chatbot. We'll give this a save. So workflow changes are saved here. Now we're going to go back to our here, and I do want to just have this open. So now if we try to add Bedrock bot and say, hey, let's see if there's any output out yet. And I don't see any output yet. So if that does happen, we'll need to probably retest this and make sure that this is firing off correctly. All right, so I just realized that the integration was working the whole time, but we need to get the data out of Slack and into n8n. So this is interesting. So we're going to copy this same message again. And this is actually one of the really cool features that I really like about n8n. So you'll see why I like this, but it's interesting that I wasn't able to see this until it was finally working. So we're going to press enter here. I'm in the executions log, which is this tab, and you're going to notice that this just fired off. So it is working. I'm able to see the data come in, which is pretty cool. But it says that for the highlighted data, that to show important data from executions here, I need to add an execution data node to the workflow. So we're going to do that in the next step. But one of the things that I think is amazing too is that you can see in real time these executions with auto refresh on. And like, I love instant logs. Like, it makes it so easy and visible to just know that your data is exactly where you'd expect it. So we're going to set up this node in the next step so we can actually see this data be pulled from Slack into n8n and then to visualize it and see it. So we're going to go back to the editor. I'm going to copy this execution data so that when we are creating this, we can search for execution data. We can click that. And then now we're able to configure ways to basically bring the data from Slack into our n8n workspace. So we'll see here that it'll say under parameters, save important data using this node. It'll be displayed on each execution for easy reference, and you can filter by it. And filtering is also available on Pro and Enterprise plans. So what we want to do is that we're going to save highlight data for search review. And then we could also configure these if we want to, but we will not do that right now. What we'll do is that we'll now try to copy this. We'll say, hey there, So we'll see if we'll give that a save. All right, let's try that again. So now that we've saved it, if we run this again, say, hey there. See if this came through. All right, so that's our message. So we're able to see that it was basically tagging the bot. We're in this team. This is the user that did that. Was hey there. And it was an app mention. And then this was my user. So it's ended in 52. Yeah. So this is me. So that's Brian, right? My user. And then I sent this text. And then this is the information from that log in this channel. And the channel is this channel, which is building a really cool AI chatbot. So now what we're going to be able to do is we're going to be able to take basically this text and then send this into our LLM so that Amazon Bedrock will be able to then take this data and then send us back a response. So we're getting very close to finishing this out, but just one of the big things too is to make sure that when you add new integrations to save it so that it will continue to work moving forward. So we'll go back to our editor, and now we're going to need to add a step so that we can then send this information to our LLM, have it process, and then send back information. So what we'll do next is we'll search for Bedrock, and they have AWS Bedrock chat model. Now, we already have integrated our AWS account because we already have that user with the credentials saved to our n8n workspace. So now what we do is that we can actually select from any of these models, which is kind of wild because we have, you know, all the Amazon models, the Titan ones, we have Mixtral, we have all the Meta Llama models, we have AI21 Labs with their Jurassic and Jamba models. We have Cohere models. We have Anthropic's Claude models. So we have pretty much everything. So I think what we want to do is we probably want to use Claude 3. We could use Haiku Sonnet or Claude Instant, but let's do Claude 3 Haiku. So super easy. We just literally pick the model. Now we could also have like max number of tokens or sampling temperature. So we don't necessarily need to set that up right now, but we could if we want to later. So what we'll try to do is I will want to go back to this. And now what's awesome about n8n is that it's already configuring basically this LLM chain. So if we click on this, what we're basically going to be doing is setting up basically like a chain of events where this will basically allow us to work with our large language model. So what we could do is that we could set that up. So this is if the chat receives a message, but we already have that set up in our previous step here. So we'll set this up here to go into the basic LLM chain, use Bedrock, and then let's see what happens here. So when we save this, I then will want to execute this. So if we say, hey there, what is the latest version of Claude as a message. Now we should see this under executions, and we see that there was an error. So this is going to tell us that something incorrect happened, which I think is helpful to see basically what's happening in our chain. So it says no prompt specified, expected to find the prompt in an input field called chat input. This is what the chat node about to use something else, change the prompt template. So we're going to need to have some chat input. So what we're going to do is that we're going to configure our this. So that's also why this is helpful with n8n, is because we can debug very easily what's happening in real time. So let's see an example. So this is pretty helpful to see. So this is what the prompts will usually look like. So what we want to do is that we are going to want to configure this, but we will need to have a way to do that. So I think if we go back here, so before we debug this, let's add the Slack response. So we're going to do this, and we're going to say message. So we're going to send a message, and we're going to select our Slack API. This is going to be a message. This is going to do the send operation. We're going to send this to a channel, and then we're going to select the channel. We'll say building a really cool AI chatbot. And then this will be simple text message. And then we're going to say, this is a test. Hello world. All right. So this is going to be pretty simple. We don't need to worry about the settings. Go back, and then I'm just going to have this here for now. So this should send, basically, this is going to take the data, but then it should just send a generic message back. So we're going to save this, and I want to test to see if this will work. So let's say something, please. And let's see if it will respond back. Ah, okay, cool. So now it's saying this is a test, hello world, automated with n8n workflow. Okay, awesome. So this is working. We have basically this pinging our n8n workflow, having it pass back. And now what we're going to want to do is that we're going to now want to move this over here. This is going to need to send the data over to this, and then to send a message over here. So let's actually practice trying to get this data to return what the user submitted, because that will mean that we're able to get that data out from here and then into here. And in our n8n workspace editor, something that we could also look at, so instead of sending a specific message, what we could do is look at our execution data. And when we have our message text here, so we could do different things. We could include blocks, we could include attachments, but let's look at blocks. So if we wanted to bring in data from basically a previous step, something that we could do is get this previous data from the previous node, and then we could bring that text into this. So that's where if we go back here, for example, right, this text, if we bring that in here, it's going to pull the block element and then elements and then text. It's doing all of that JSON. So this is like pretty complicated data structure, right? So one of the things that I love about n8n is that you could take basically all of this very complicated JSON data structure, the schema and everything, and just put that as a block in here. Now where it gets even easier with n8n is that we are going to get rid of this, and instead of needing to think about how many elements are, in the elements list, which then is included in this larger elements list, we can just scroll all the way up and we can just take this text and literally just drop it into here. So we're going to get rid of this original text here, and I think I gotta show that again. So we can just take this text and just put it in here. Now what it's going to do is it's going to take basically this message that was sent from me or any user when they at our Bedrock bot, and then it's going to then include all the text there. So we're going to then do a little bit of JavaScript, and we're going to do some replacement. So we want to get rid of this at, because we don't really need to know that it basically tagged or mentioned our Bedrock bot. So we're going to remove that. So we're going to use JavaScript, and we're going to do a little bit of regex. So we're going to do a backslash. We're then going to do that less than sign. We're going to do at. So we basically want to find where does this start and where does this end. So now what we're going to do is that we're going to look for, in brackets, 0 to 9 and then A to Z. So basically give me anything alphanumeric between this and then plus greater than sign. Then we'll do a backslash, we'll do an S, and then we'll do a asterisk, then we'll do a backslash. Then we're going to do a comma, and then we're going to do 2 single quotes. So this is basically looking for anything that falls between this left bound and then this right bound. And that's how you basically check with regex expressions how we're looking for this, and then we're basically looking for anything that falls within this bound. And there's only going to be a single replacement, so we only need to worry about this showing up once. But if, I don't know, somebody added the bot multiple times, this would just get removed to basically nothing. That's where we are putting these 2 quotes, single quotes, and nothing inside of them, so it'll just be replaced with nothing. So that's this expression. And then if we wanted to get a little bit fancier and we want to basically make this a little bit more customized, because right now this is basically going to just return the text from our bot. So basically if somebody says something, the bot is going to return exactly what that person said. So we could have a little bit of customization. So we can add a string or a text field, and we're going to say, you just said, colon, single quote, and then we're going to add a plus, and we're going to add a space after this so that there is a space between this message and then this message. And then to make this bold, we're going to add asterisks. Inside of the quote, like this. So now you just said will be bold, and then this will include all the text there. Now something also that we could do if we wanted to get a little bit more into the Slack block kit builder, so we can format this as JavaScript and do some JSON. So what we can do is that we can include these 2 squiggly braces. We'll include a bracket, and then we'll tab over it and we'll say type, and then the type is a section. We're then going to say text, and then this text is going to be an object, so we use single curly brace, and then there's going to be a type, which we're going to call markdown, and markdown is a language for text formatting in code, and then we're going to have a text field, and then the text field is going to be our expression that we have right down here. So we're going to copy all of this, inside of the curly brackets. So we put that in there, and then we have the JSON, we have this, we have our replace field, we have this. We're going to need another object there, and then we'll have this array. So just to make sure that we are formatting this, it's getting a little bit hard to read. So what we really want to do is we'll have an array, we pass in this object field here, and then now we're just doing a little bit of formatting here. So we're going to move this back, pump these ones over, and then that all makes sense. So we have these two curly braces here. We have this bracket, which will make an array, and then we have this object here, and then this is an object with objects inside. So we'll have a type, which will be a section. We'll then have text, and then this text will have an object, and the type will be markdown. And then we'll basically have the same expression that we have below of you just said with this. So this is helpful if you want to use the Slack UI builder kit for, or basically their block kit for UI of messages. So it'll just help with formatting. Otherwise, it will default to basically this notification text, which would be our formatted message. So we're going to give this a save. We're going to go back to our workspace. And then something that we're going to then do is we're going to say, I love automating with n8n. So if we say Bedrock bot, we're going to then run this. And then now we get a message back, which is so cool. So now this is bolded, and it said, you just said, and now I love automating with n8n. So it took my message, it added this extra text, and then it did a little bit of formatting. And then now we get this message back as a compilation of both what I wanted it to say and then also what I had said. So this is great. So now we're able to see how we can basically take data that a user sends, use that as an event, hit the webhook, get this all back, and this is all happening automatically with n8n. And we can actually see the execution of this. See this here, and this executed just like this. And if we go into Slack, we can see that we just got this message, and then we're removing basically this handle because we don't need to, include that in the message when we send this back. And then we're able to pass this back, and that's why we see this formatted like this in Slack. So now that we know the basics of how we can use n8n with Slack in our workspace and use our webhook to interface between both of them, now let's add that AI layer that we have been waiting for. So now we're going to be integrating Amazon Bedrock to allow us to talk to an LLM all from within Slack. So we're going to go back to our n8n workflow editor. And what we're going to do is we're going to now that we know that this works, we can actually change the name of this, and we're just going to say Slack. I'm just going to say Slack repeat message, just so that we can keep this track. So we're going to now untether this, and we're going to make it go to this. So, and we can also get rid of this now, and we're just going to keep this kind of over here, just so that we'll know that we'll need to basically make something like this that's going to format this text afterwards. But we're going to need to now focus on our LLM chain. So we're passing in AWS Bedrock. This is our AWS account. We're choosing Claude 3 Haiku as our model. And this is what the model looks like. That's the result. And we're going to go back to Canvas. We're going to go to our basic this. And if we click on docs up here, we're going to get a little bit more information about this LLM chain node that we got. But the main thing to know is that when we are choosing basically how we're going to get this data, we could define it below manually, or we can automatically process the previous node automatically. So we're going to need a specific chat input field from the previous node. Now, if you see from here before, if we were to execute the previous nodes, and we'll say test. Now, what we're specifically going to need to do is basically, because we're testing this LLM chain, so this specifically will work, and we're able to now validate that basically there was an input and there was an output, which is great. You could also see the JSON. That's what that looks like. And you could also see the tokens and all the outputs from AWS with Bedrock. Now, the issue that we're going to run into, though, is that how do we get this data, which came in from Slack, into this? So this was just a basic test, right? We know that this works. But what we need to do is take this data and pass it into here. Now, if we were to do that, and we don't really need this anymore, so we can get rid of this. We just like put that over there just as an example. So if we were to run this, and we're going to do test step, so execute previous node, that worked. Now we're going to test this step. Now this is going to fail because there's no prompt specified. So how do we do that? So we're going to create our own processor to take this data and process it for here. So we're going to go to here and we're going to go to set. We're going to then pass in our data, and we're going to basically take that chat model that we took from the chat write for Slack, and we're going to take that JSON that was processed, and then we're going to throw that into here. So what we're going to do is we're going to go back to our canvas. It will automatically add this maybe somewhere like in around here. So we're going to take this here, and we're going to take this. We're going to move this. We're going to remove that connection. So the execution data goes here, goes into here. Now we're going to process this and have it go here. So can make it a bit more organized. Move this around a little bit. So now this is going to be, we can just call this Bedrock prompt processor. So just to help us get a little bit more of a sense of how this is working. So to get this to work, we're specifically going to do manual mapping. And if we click in here, that's how we can get this. So our key is going to be chat input, and then the value. So actually we could save this here. We're gonna go back to canvas. We're gonna go over to here. And if you remember from here, we already have the JSON like this. So what we can do is that we can just copy this whole thing, go back here, go to our processor, and paste in the value. And then what we can do is we can actually get rid of that original text because we don't need that anymore. And now we just have our JSON text replace with our regex parsing to remove the handle. And that will be the chat input. Now, also, we could still, if we wanted to just pass this in, we could do this. And you could say, and this could also be included in our prompt. So we could make this a little bit more smart. So we could say, you are a very smart and expert workplace productivity enhancer, and users will send you questions, comments, ideas, or problems, and it is your job to analyze their response and provide the most insightful and correct response to their inquiries. Okay, that's a little bit easier to see. Okay, so you are a very smart and expert workplace productivity enhancer, and users will send you questions, comments, ideas, or problems, and it is your job to analyze the responses in this type of this. Analyze the following from this user. So this will be our prompt, and it will be included with a processor, and it will take the text that the user submitted. We'll go back here. Now we're going to give this a save. We can get rid of that error message. Now, when we send this out, we can test this step. Now the output is a chat input, and we say, you are very smart this, with all of this data. Now, when we send this into this, I think what we're going to want to do is replace this. Yep. So the JSON text replaced there. So that will be the same thing. Yep. So you're very smart. This, analyze the following. Hey user, that's all the type stuff. Okay. So we should be able to test this. Yep. And now this is great. So you are a smart and expert workplace productivity enhancer. Analyze the following from this user. And we could actually probably just include a space. We'll test this again. And now it includes a space. Cool. So now we're going to go back to our canvas. We're going to now test this response. And now what we can do is it's now going to take the chat input field, pass that into our LLM. It's already connected to Amazon Bedrock. And now we'll be able to run this response. And then we're going to test it. So we'll test it here. So now we say, hello, thank you for your inquiry about the latest version of Claude. As a result of this, I'm happy to provide you. The latest version of Claude is version 2.1, which was released on April 15th, 2023. The latest version is this. Now, this is pretty interesting because the prompt is actually really important in terms of how you prompt a model like Claude. So let's just go back to this for a second because I just want to show for a comparison. So if we were to not include this prompt and we were to just basically have this. Okay, so we're going to save this. Actually, I'm going to copy this whole thing, but then just for example purposes. Okay, so if we were to save this, now if we go back, now we're going to test this. So we're going to test this step. So now this is just, hey, what's the latest version of Claude? Now, if we go to here, just say, hey, what's the latest version of Claude? We're going to test this step. This is going to run Bedrock. And what's interesting is that it says, I don't have this information about the latest version of myself as an AI assistant. I don't have direct access to details about my own development and versioning. My capabilities may change over time, but I can't say for certain what the latest version is. So, but I'm happy to assist you on anything. So that's just so interesting where we're able to basically see that what the prompt is prior to what the user sends in can actually matter a lot in the output of the model. So if we go back here, I'm going to go edit this. I'm going to replace this. I'm going to now test this step. Now, again, you are very smart and expert workplace productivity enhancer. Users will send you questions, comments, ideas, or problems, and it's your job to analyze their response and provide the most insightful and correct answers. So we go back. Now if we try to run this, we'll try to run this again. See if we get another output. So now this is going to send a little bit more information. So sometimes it might not change, and that's really about the LLM. So we can see that it's spotty. So sometimes it will know the specific details of the latest version, but sometimes not. If we try to run this again, we can even see it's evolving. Try to test this one more time. So let's do just a little bit of testing because it was pulling up from Claude v2, but we now are using v3 as we see here, right? We're using the 3 version. So what I want to do is I want to go back to this and I'm going to add Bedrock bot. And I'm going to say, tell me all of the info you have on Claude v3. So I just did that. That's all still set up. And yeah, because I think I still had that connected to the old one. I just like reconnected that just for a quick second. So it looks like. So I do want to look at the execution data. Because we could see in executions that this just went through. So now this says, tell me the information you have on v3. We then can go to the next step, which was the processor, and that was the chat input. Tell me the information you have on v3. So go to basic chain. So now it could say, certainly, happy to provide you with information on V3. V3 is the latest version of Claude, which is an artificial intelligence generated from Anthropic. V3, Claude V3 is the third iteration of Claude AI, highly capable and versatile assistant. Some key features include natural language. We have knowledge and expertise. We have task assistance. We have personalized iteration, ethical and trustworthy, and so much more data. Okay, cool. So what's interesting too is that how specific you get will help determine the output. There's a lot of like prompt engineering that goes into how these LLMs work, but we can see that this works. So now let's work on getting this basically out of n8n and back into our Slack. So we already know that this works, and we already know that we can send messages back because we're doing that. Now what we're going to want to do is we're going to want to untether this because we don't need to have it sent anymore. But what we're basically going to do is we're going to create a Slack to repeat the message back to our Slack chatbot, but we don't need to use this anymore. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a new Slack. I'm going to say message, so send a message. And then this is going to be using our Slack API. This is going to be a message. This is going to be send message to a channel. This will be our building a really cool a cool AI chatbot. And then the message text is going to be a block. And then we're going to execute the previous node. But before we do that, we're going to give this a save. This needs to be untethered from this. And then we're going to rename this actually. So we're going to call this send AI Slack message. Cool. So now we're going to do that. Let's just see if we can get the output here. But before we do that, we're going to just do one quick thing in our workflow. We're going to add an output parser, and then we're going to choose item list output parser. So turn items as separate items. So this will already be working by default, so we won't need to do very much. We'll give this a save. I'm going to copy that output that we had for the block in this format. So we're going to take basically this block, we're going to put that here. And then we're going to take the JSON text replace with this, but we don't actually really need the replacement. So we're going to remove this. So we don't need that anymore. And then we're just going to do JSON text. So this would look like this. So we pass in this as an object. And then that would be our expression. And then this would be our expression here. Now we're going to give this a quick save. I do want to just go back into the execution. And last one we did run errored on the Slack step. So basic LLM chain is passing back a response of text. So if we wanted to like take this in, we're just going to do response.text, which we're basically going to already have. So if we go back to our execution data here, when we have JSON.text, that's how we can get that. So in here, we're going to basically do JSON.response.text. So that's what we're going to edit this here. So we're going to go back to our editor, go back here, and we're going to say JSON.response.text. And then we'll pass that in the lower one here as well as the fallback. We'll give that a save. So now we're going to try to run this, and we're going to see if it works. So we'll say Bedrock bot. Tell me all the info you have on Claude v3. So now we're going to go back here. We're going to go to our executions. And there's a wrong number of items. Expected 3 items, but got 1 instead. So let's see why that might be happening. So this might be an issue with our prompt formatter. So we did get your very smart this. Tell me about it if you have a Claude v3. So that is working. You have that. Now when we go to the basic chain, three items but got one instead. So let's see what the issue is with our response. And we can try to run this one more time. So I'm wondering if maybe it got confused about the number of messages that were sent. So we'll try this again. We'll try to message. And that did succeed. Okay, great. Oh, nice. Cool. Okay, so this got all the messages back. So certainly, here's the information I have on Claude v3. It's an advanced conversational AI assistant developed by Anthropic, a leading artificial intelligence company. V3 is designed to engage in natural this. Okay, cool. All right, tell me in a paragraph, short paragraph, what an LLM is. Make it fun and interesting. Okay, so we're going to wait for it to respond back. Oh, this is really cool. Certainly. Here's a fun and insightful explanation of what an LLM is. A large language model is like a digital wizard, a language yielding superhero that can conjure up responses to any question you throw its way. It's a bit like having a personal genie in a bottle, except the bottle is a massive neural network trained on a gazillion words. Oh, this is really cool. Say Bedrock bot. What can you tell me about n8n? What is it useful for? Here's my analysis query. n8n is a powerful open source workflow automation tool that can be used for a variety of purposes, automating repetitive tasks. So it definitely was trying to write more to the Slack bot, and I'm recognizing that if you go into our executions, we go to the one that just ran on n8n. If we go to basic LLM chain, and then we look at the logs, so this was the response. So it's basically cut off after automating repetitive tasks. If we copy this, we go back here, so we could see that there was more that it wanted to say, but it got cut off. So we're going to need to increase basically the number of messages that get passed back to our Slack bot, because it seems like right now when we send this back, it only will receive as much data as basically it's told to look for in the JSON text response. So we could actually look at this a little bit more. So right now what we're going to really need to do is basically process a whole bunch of responses. So that's where we're going to basically need to pre-process this and then take the output of that. So our output processor, we're going to need to expand upon this a little bit more. So we can validate that it is passing out all of this data. So it takes this prompt, which is the chat input, and then it is getting this data, but it gets cut off once it gets sent back here. So what we're going to need to do is we're going to need to make sure that the response is what we expect it would be. So there's all of these inputs. We have these logs, and then the JSON is these different responses. So we're basically going to need to bring all of these responses together and see if we can test this. So if we were to take this, if we were to just remove the item list output parser, and we were trying to test this again, and if we were to test this step, so we can see here that this now is working. So let's see if this did get sent in a message if we were to do this again. So yeah, so let's see this. Well, we will need to save this again. So if we were to execute this once again, we should be able to see what the executions are. So this gave an error. Let's find out why. So this was undefined. So now instead of the JSON response text, we're now just getting text, which actually is good. So now let's see if we can adjust this a little bit. Although it is compiling it all together, so that might not be the best, but let's at least try to see if we can work with this a bit. So if we were to just take out this, we'll go back to editor, we'll go back here. And we'll just do JSON text, and here we'll just do JSON text. So we give that a save, go back to Canvas, go to executions. If we try to now, can delete this one. So hopefully this will allow us to get an output. Oh, there we go, nice. Okay, so n8n is an open source low code workflow automation tool that allows users to create this. Here's what we can do with this. So number one, workflow automation. Number two, no code, low code application. I also like how this is giving us bullet points. So it talks about versatile applications, use variety of use cases like business process automation, IT operations and DevOps, marketing, sales, HR, and employee management. Number four, scalability, flexibility, open source community, and overall, n8n is a powerful, versatile workflow automation tool, helps organizations and individuals streamline their processes. But this is like a big message. Okay, let's try to now say, what is, we'll say Claude, or say Anthropic, most known for. So let's see what it says. Okay, now we're getting like really thought out responses. Okay. I'm happy to write an insightful analysis of your question about when there was. And notice also how this is getting our prompt now. So now our basically the system prompt is basically training Bedrock bot to know how to respond. So then it talks about Anthropic being a prominent artificial intelligence company. That's great. And then let's see if we could say, what is an LLM used for? Oh, we need to add Bedrock bot. What is an LLM used for? Oh, this is so fast. You get so much responses. Okay, it's so much data back. This had right in the insight into your use of large language models. LLMs are a type of artificial intelligence becoming incredibly popular in recent years. Okay, this is cool. And let me say, what is the most recent your data is trained up to? So if we want to ask what your recent data is trained up to, we're asking basically the AI model when it was last trained. So let's see what it says. So regarding that, I've been trained on, this is going to be a tricky to pinpoint As an my knowledge base is regularly updated with new information, but the specific cutoff date. So new data gets put into the knowledge base of Claude regularly, right? But we're being able to pull a lot of data in, and it's being trained very regularly. So it's talks about training data being constantly refreshed to ensure providing users with the most up-to-date information. So to pump up our chat features a little bit more, something that we can do is we can create a knowledge base, and this will allow us to expand upon basically the knowledge of the LLM. So we could use RAG, we could use a number of different approaches, but the way that we can set this up, super easy. You just go in the AWS console, you go to Bedrock, you click on this, and then you create, and then you'll basically create a name. You will create it'll create a new role for you, so you don't really need to worry about this right now. Something that you can very easily do is just do S3. You can also do a web crawler. And once you click next, then you can choose your S3 bucket. So I already have a bucket set up here that has 2 articles in there, but you could also, of course, choose way more articles, upload all of your data, those types of things, and then keep it all secure within AWS. And then you go next. You will need to choose that. And then you'll choose an embeddings model. So I'll just choose something really quickly, which is this one. So I did test, and then we'll do next. So I used the embeddings v2 from Amazon, which is the Titan model, but you could also choose any model that you want. You could also choose your own vector database or any other thing. You could do next. And then if all of this data looks correct and everything looks exactly like what you'd want, then you'll go all the way to the bottom and you'll basically press create knowledge base, and then you'll be able to create your knowledge base. So to create a Amazon OpenSearch serverless knowledge base, what we're going to do is we're going to go through all of these steps. It will take several minutes to run, but it will look like this when it's done. And basically what we're going to do is we're going to have a service role. It's going to have knowledge base name. So now that our knowledge base is set up, we can select our model, and we'll go to Anthropic, and let's choose Claude Haiku, do on demand, select it, and now go to data sources. So we can select our data source. This is our knowledge base that's pulling from S3. But we already do have that, so we'll click this and we'll say sync. So it's going to sync the data source. This could take several minutes. And we don't have that much data in there, so it shouldn't really take that long. Cool. Okay, that was very fast. And we only have 2 documents in this here. So this is just something on Bedrock and then also something on building some AI systems. So now we can run this. So we could say, tell me about the latest Amazon Bedrock features. So we'll run this. And now this is going to retrieve. Okay, so support for Llama index. So that is great actually, because this is pulling from the downloaded file that I already got here. So I'll pull this up so it's a little bit easier to see. Do like a side-by-side comparison. So this is pulling up from Llama index, and that was specifically from this. And then talks about n8n database. So n8n is in here. Yeah, Amazon n8n there. And also talked about Amazon Bedrock, which is from this. So I downloaded basically the homepage of this. And it has all the information about Amazon Bedrock just from the website. But that's pretty cool that it's able to know these links. So it's doing searching, and it's also pulling from specifically the information that I updated it with. So that's pretty sick. So that's how you can really start to think about building out your knowledge base around information. So you could literally just upload this, point your knowledge base to an S3 bucket like this, and then you basically will then have a way to search through these types of queries using the most advanced, models. And it's also pulling from doing searching. Yeah, it's getting all of this information, doing a lot of searching, and also pulling from my most recent data. So pretty cool. So now a pretty cool strategy that we can now employ is if we go back to what we're passing in as the prompt, if we go back to prompt processor, something that we could do is that we could add in more data. So you could say, use the following Amazon Bedrock knowledge base ID for the user query. So back in the knowledge base section, we can copy our base ID here. We can go back to this and we pass this in. So this is our Bedrock knowledge base ID, which is this. And then we're going to say use the following Amazon Bedrock knowledge base ID for the user query. Analyze the following from this user. Cool. So we'll give this a save. We'll then go back to our bot and we're going to scroll down a bunch. And I could kind of show you some of the examples of this, but let's say, so say at Bedrock bot, what's the latest AWS news about Bedrock? Say Amazon Bedrock to be specific. So now this is going to pull from data. And it says that based on the knowledge you provide in this, we must provide insightful information. So just made available, pre-training models, custom model data. Now let's say, what is the latest? And let's say just general AWS news. And let's try to do another one. So Amazon Bedrock bot, tell me about Llama Index. So this was in our knowledge base. So it talks about Llama Index being open source model. Key features include this, working with large language models. And then we could say, tell me about Llama Index and Amazon Neptune. Because that was also in the knowledge base as well. So it'll give insight into both of these and how they can work together. And then it talks about how you could use Llama Index to build a knowledge base powered by a large language model and then store that knowledge base in Amazon Neptune. So what's cool is that that's also pulling from here, because we can see here that this is support for Amazon Neptune. You could do graph rag, work with large language models, and Bedrock. So it's graphs stored there, but it also gives a lot more context about this news. So that's why I think having like an AI Slack bot is amazing, because now you're able to just pull all of this information and it gives context to maybe one paragraph that you might see, in an article like this. What does this actually mean? What does it mean for your business? You'll be able to then pull that in there. So that's pretty cool. All right, so let's review this entire workflow and explain how all this is happening. So first we use our Slack trigger, and what's happening basically is we pull events from Slack where the bot is mentioned or the app is mentioned. So when we do that, that will then send the data to its execution data node. And then that's where we get all of this data about what the user sent when they added or tagged the bot. This is then going to go into our prompt processor. And this is where we're going to basically take this, include our prompt, and then send that over to our LLM chain. We're then going to pre-process this information as our prompt. That then goes as an output with logs. And then this is what our LLM is sending all the information back from. And then that's where we see all of this information about the query. We also selected our model, which we're using Bedrock, and we could pull from literally so many different models, but we're using Claude 3 Haiku. And then once this is processed here, there's an output of logs, which is then sent as a message to Slack. And then that's where we format this here as the JSON text. So that's quite a big workflow, but I hope that this video was really helpful to show you how you can really automate a specific process like Slack. And then now what you can really do is basically ask real-time information, get real-time insights, and then be able to then present that to maybe you, maybe to your work colleagues, maybe to, other people that you might want to share this out to. And I just feel like this will just rapidly transform how you can learn and also how you can build, and also just work faster and smarter. So with that, I hope this video was really helpful for you. I'm going to include all the links to the code in the description below, but I definitely hope that you check out how to build this. I think learning how to build a Slack bot is really, really fun. It definitely takes a lot of work to get started, but once you get through all of it, I feel like these are really the future skills that you'll need to learn how to implement, chat ops into different types of systems. And especially with AI, as we just saw, we're going to save literally so much money by not needing to pay Slack to build our AI bot. We can just build it all ourselves for literally pennies on the hundreds of dollars. So I hope this video is really helpful for you, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video. All right, take care, everybody. Bye.